Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. The Season 3 Reloaded update has now had its patch notes released, and boy, there is a lot of stuff for us to cover today, so let's jump into it with some no-nonsense news. To begin with, John McClane and Rambo are being added into the game. There was a trailer for it released today, which I'll link in the description if you want to watch the full thing, but they look kind of funny to me. Like, does this really look like John McClane to you guys? Anyway, that is the least of our worries right now. Let's talk about Cranked 2, which is the new LTM. In Cranked 2, all mystery box locations are going to be active at once and feature an explosive selection of weapons and support for you to use, with a higher probability of you getting support compared to last time. It also changes up the formula a bit because all players are going to just spawn in with a knife, and zombies are now more likely to drop lethal explosive equipment when killed. So they're really doubling down on the whole kind of 80s action movie, lots of explosions and cool effects and stuff going off. That's kind of the idea. The bad news is that the crafting table, wall buys, and more importantly, the main quest is going to be disabled on both maps that you can play Cranked 2 on, which is Firebase Z and D Machine. So if you enjoyed Cranked 1 as it was without feeling like it was kind of missing any potential or stuff like that, then you're probably going to have a great time with Cranked 2, lots of explosions and fun, and obviously if you die, you explode, and that's the end of your game. But if, like me, you were really hoping for the main quest to be active, you're unfortunately going to be disappointed this time round. Speaking of side modes, Onslaught's getting updated. They are including Standoff in the map rotation now, with new intel as well, and Crossroads is being added back into rotation. An Onslaught LTM is also being enabled, where you start with a random weapon, and then with every surge, your weapon is replaced with another random weapon that scales up with difficulty, which sounds like a really interesting way to kind of balance your power as the rounds progress. You will still be able to get ammo mods and pack-a-punch upgrades so that you kind of outpace the scaling of the difficulty, but it sounds interesting. It sounds kind of like an Onslaught-y gun game, so I'm definitely going to be giving this a go. There's also a new challenge with an exclusive weapon blueprint available from Onslaught. The final thing to say before we get onto the main meat and potatoes of this video, which are all the crazy gameplay updates that they're making to zombies overall, as well as all the stuff that they're adding to Outbreak and D Machine and Firebase Z, is Dead Ops Arcade 3 is getting loads of cool updates here. For example, if you rejoin a match in progress, you'll now have your fates restored upon rejoining, which is a great quality of life update. There are new rare item spawns in the Dark Crypt bonus room. There's a new Silverback Slideways bonus map in rotation. Meatballs now do less damage in first person mode, and there are heaps of other changes, so if you're a Dead Ops fan, this should be a great update for you. Jugga has not forgotten you guys. Okay, Outbreak. The main quest is going to be launching at 10 a.m. Pacific time, which is 1 p.m. Eastern time, or 6 p.m. in the UK on May 20th. That's Thursday. There's this image here with an M on it that suggests that the Easter egg might be revolving around TVs or transmissions of some kind, and seeing as there are very suspicious TVs in multiple Outbreak maps, I think that that's quite a plausible theory. I'll obviously be making a no-nonsense guide for that on my channel as soon as we solve it on stream, so you can look forward to that later this week. Make sure you're subscribed, of course, so you don't miss it. And Outbreak's getting a lot of other stuff, which I've already talked about some of, and so I'll go quite quickly through this. There's a new Order Encounter world event where there's a big order walking through the world. You can take it down if you want to, and you'll get a lot of rewards for doing so. They're adding fishing, whereby you can find fishing poles scattered throughout the different maps and then reel in various items like salvage, perks, and even potentially wonder weapons. And of course, they're adding loads of new intel, radio transmissions, artifacts, audio logs, all those sorts of things that you would expect. Now, there are some changes here to the enemies in Outbreak that I think you guys are going to be pretty interested in. One is they've reduced the chest weak point health of the Tempests. So Tempests should now be more susceptible to you doing extra damage to them via their chest. And they've also made it so that the jetpack of the Krasny Soldat, that's the Panzer, takes less damage to destroy. This should mean that those special enemies are a little easier to take down, and they've also reduced the number of Tempests that spawn, specifically in the Dugga region, which is the new one that got added in the last update. All of you who have been escaping the holdout objectives in Dugga are also going to be disappointed here because Treyarch have patched that too, so you can no longer get out. In terms of quality of life changes, they've increased the Fury Crystal event timer, which I think is great news because originally I could hardly do this. Like, it was so difficult to find all the crystals in time, but thankfully no longer. And they've also addressed an issue where the Demented Echo, that's the kind of weird purple ball thing that you find, would continuously scale in health while progressing regions, and so sometimes you just never be able to kill it. And finally, they've also added the ability to ping the overhead map now using a free cursor, like you might do in other kind of BR modes or whatever, and that should mean you can coordinate with your teammates better and kind of point at certain things in the map and say, okay, go over here, and just generally have a bit of an easier time planning things with your teammates. Also, for those of you that have been unlocking guns like the MAC-10, Groza, Street Sweeper, Farah, etc., they're all in the mystery box now. Okay, let's move on to a big one. The max health cap for almost all enemy types has been raised to provide more challenge above round 40. In case you guys didn't know, the previous health cap was at round 40, and so now we're going to presumably have a much higher ceiling, and things will, in theory, technically get a lot more difficult at rounds, let's say 50, 60 plus. The reason for this is that the zombies that now are going to be spawning in as super sprinters will have more health than they did before, and that is going to make it harder if you are an elite player getting to those high rounds. But it's not all bad news. There are some things here that are going to make your lives easier, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Quickly though, here while I'm talking about gameplay tweaks, they have removed the trial from the game that required you to take damage and then heal from it, which I think is good because that was basically a pointless trial. It was really slow and boring. And some of those new weapons that are being added to the box, like the ZRG sniper rifle, sledgehammer, wakizashi, machete, all those new weapons are also potentially earnable from trials as well. Field upgrades now activate faster, which is such good news because sometimes that thing would just not activate properly and you'd basically die because of it. Whereas now it won't wait on the animation, it will just activate and then the animation might be late or whatever if it needs to be. And they've also fixed a bug where healing aura could reset other people's field upgrade meters, which I think is so funny. I kind of wish I'd had a chance to use this and troll some of my friends in games before it was patched. But in fairness, it does sound like a good thing for them to have fixed. They have doubled the ammo capacity of the combat bow. Self-revives now cost 50 high-grade salvage more every time you craft one. And so once again, that is going to completely change that high round meta. You're not going to be able to afford infinite revives anymore. There is basically going to come a point where you simply run out of salvage and you have no chance of earning enough in order to get your next revive. The players that have been getting their 100 pluses with like 30 downs now are going to really struggle. So I'm really curious to see what you guys think of this in the comments down below. Let me know if you think that is a good change or a bad one. Custom mod blueprints can now use the applied blueprint feature that they added a couple of weeks ago. And this is bigger than I think a lot of people realize because I personally spoke to Kevin Drew from the Treyarch team about this, and he confirmed to me that this is going to eliminate RNG on random wall weapons or box weapons that you get, because not only is this going to allow you to apply your camos to those weapons, it's also going to allow you to apply your attachments as if you're using a weapon kit. But the beauty of this is that obviously in theory you can have multiple different blueprints available for a single weapon, and so you can pick and choose for the scenario that you're in what kind of modifications you want to make to your gun, and it just opens up the potential for different ways to play zombies in a really big way here. No longer are you going to have to rely on using your loadout weapon the entire game if you want those specific attachments. That reliance is gone. It's a fantastic change, and I'm really excited to jump in and get my hands on this one. They have made a change though, which says that they've addressed an issue where Pack-a-Punch camo wasn't appearing on weapon blueprints. My concern here is that they might be making it so that you no longer keep your camo if you pack, which I think is not something that I really want. If I pack a punch, I think I want to keep my blueprint camo, but I'm sure they'll give us more clarity about this in the coming days, and if you guys make your voices heard in the comments as to what you want, Treyarch can act accordingly. There are also some really significant weapon tuning changes, which I'm going to run through now. Some of these changes are global, like they affect MP as well, and others just affect zombies, so with each kind of weapon class or category, I'll mention the global thing first and then all the zombie specific stuff right after. Let's start with snipers. The global is that the ADS momentum of each sniper has now been customized to be individual for each sniper rifle. And if you don't know what this is, it's basically the speed and the heaviness of the weapon as you move it to your eye to scope in or move it down to scope out, but only when you don't fully reset to the hipfire position. So if you're at hipfire and then you scope in, things shouldn't feel too different, but if you're kind of jiggling in and out of ADS, then you should notice a difference here. They've also added some sniper specific flinch when you get hit, which is more pronounced in ADS, and I think this will be less of an issue in zombies, but certainly in MP you're going to really notice that. In terms of zombie specific changes, they've made some really weird moves here. So they've buffed the Swiss K31, increasing its max damage, min damage, and its stock ammo when pack-a-punched, and the M82 has also had its critical damage multiplier increased and increased its max damage. But the Pellington, LW3 Tundra, and ZRG are all getting their stock ammo reduced when packed, and they're reducing the LW3's ammo capacity from 14 to 10 and decreasing its max damage unpack-a-punched, which sounds so bizarre to me. These snipers are already getting no usage and they're nerfing them? I really think Treyarch need to rethink this one. Snipers should be much more powerful. There's no bullet pen for the damn things, so they're already pretty much useless. I really disagree with these changes. Moving on to assault rifles, let's talk global changes. Their goal here is to basically increase the efficacy of ARs at long distance so they have an advantage over SMGs. And so bullet velocities are being increased pretty much across the board, but in zombies, the buffs really start to shine because they've increased the critical damage multiplier on every single AR from 2.8 to 4.5, or 4.2 on some of them, and some of them only get 4.2 when they're pack-a-punched as well. This is actually something they've done in a lot of weapon classes. They really want critical damage to be rewarding and satisfying for skillful shooters, and they've also increased max damage and in some cases stock ammo, such as on the Krig 6 and on the FFAR. The biggest buffs in this class probably go actually to the FFAR and also to the Farah, which is getting more max damage, more ammo capacity, more stock ammo, and more critical damage multiplier all the way up to 4.5. Globally for LMGs, they're trying to reduce people's reliance on the task force barrel attachment, and this means they've quite significantly increased bullet velocity, but decreased bullet velocity if you have that task force barrel attachment on. This, unfortunately, in zombies is going to mean that they're just less effective, but it's not all bad news because, like I mentioned with the ARs, they are all getting increased critical damage multipliers from 2.5 up to around 4. They're also increasing ammo capacity on a couple of them and increasing stock ammo as well, such as on the M60 pack-a-punched. Pistols are getting global buffs across the board. Their bullet velocities are being slightly increased, but only by a very minor amount. And for zombie-specific changes to pistols, they're not actually as uniform, so the Magnum is not getting increased critical damage multipliers, but it is getting decreased stock ammo when pack-a-punched. So they're nerfing the Magnum, but if you compare it to the 1911, it's getting increased damage multipliers when packed, and it's getting increased stock ammo. And if you thought that was good, the Dialotti, that's the pack-a-punch version of the Rafukas, I can't remember the name of the gun right now, that's getting increased crit damage multipliers and increased max damage and increased stock ammo, so a big buff coming in there. All the rest of the classes are not getting global changes, they're all zombie specific from here onwards. Let's start with SMGs. They're pretty much all getting buffed. In fact, the PPSH, for example, is getting pretty heavily buffed with increased crit damage multiplier, max damage, ammo capacity, and stock ammo, while others might get increased crit damage and max damage, but then decreased max ammo and stock ammo. Overall, though, this should feel like a buff for the SMG class as a whole, which I think is long overdue because these things have kind of sucked in zombies until hopefully now. Tac rifles are also getting a flat buff. There is no nerf happening here. They're just all getting increased crit damage multipliers. Now, this may have sounded like an endless list of weapon changes so far, but keep going, keep pushing through because we're now moving on to the shotguns. They have slightly increased the minimum damage of the Hauer, but they've decreased its stock ammo from 90 to 60 when non-pack-a-punched, and when packed, they've decreased the ammo capacity and decreased the stock ammo. So the Hauer is getting nerfed even more, which I think is just such bad news. I honestly feel like this thing was so fun to use and other things should be brought up to its power level instead of just completely pooping on it. So it's looking pretty bearish for the Hauer. Sad to say that that is the case. And similar is also happening to the Gallo with a decreased ammo capacity and decreased stock ammo when pack-a-punched. The Street Sweeper, on the other hand, which I also think is pretty damn strong, is just getting an increased stock ammo when packed from 120 to 180, so no nerfs there. This, I think, in many ways may signal the end of the kind of shotgun meta and the dawning of a new era of some other meta in zombies now. I'd be very curious to see what emerges, but the shotguns just don't sound like they're going to be nearly as dominant. Launchers are getting increased stock ammo, and finally, the king, the one that's at the very top of the food chain, none other than the RAYGUN, is also getting nerfed. Its stock ammo is being decreased from 80 to 60 when unpack-a-punched, which I think is actually a really significant change. The unpacked Ray is meant to feel on its own like a really exciting weapon to have, but if you use it and it just runs out of ammo straight away, that's gonna suck. Granted, you can buy ammo for your wonder weapons in Cold War Zombies, so I think the negative effect here is offset by quite a large margin, but I'm still sad to see a nerf coming through to the RAYGUN, because after all, it's a ray gun. It's not like there are other competing weapons that you're gonna think like, oh, should I use a ray gun or should I use a Colt? Like, no, just use the damn ray gun and give it the damn ammo, man. Interestingly, the pack-a-punched version is also having its minimum radius damage decreased from 800 to 700. This may sound totally unintelligible to you guys. They've written it really weirdly, but I can break it down for you. What it basically means is that at the outermost edge of the splash damage radius, so the furthest out that you can get splash damage on a zombie before it just falls off to 0 damage, that amount of damage that you would normally be doing is being reduced. So it's another nerf, and this affects the pack-a-punched version of the gun. gun. It'll mean that the ray gun feels more like a nuke in one particular area, but does a lot less further out, and unfortunately will thus mean that its wave clear potential is significantly reduced. However, it's not all bad news because they are also giving it a bit more ammo when pack-a-punched, ammo caps going from 20 to 30 and stock ammo from 80 to 90. So to compensate the fact that it's doing less, they're going to make us shoot more and give us the ammo to do so, which is a change that I don't really understand. Like, I don't really know why that was necessary for them to do, but they've done it. So the ray gun's nerfed. That's just going to be something we have to live with. Let me know what you think of that in the comments down below. They've also made a change where completing the main quest, so basically the Easter egg in a given map, will reward players with bonus Ethereum crystals equivalent to that of the last available exfil in their game. So if you get to round 32 and finish an Easter egg, it will give you crystals as if you just did an exfil on round 31. This is a great change. I think that it's something that really should have been in there at launch, to be totally honest with you. But seeing as most regular zombies players will have maxed out their crystals by now, or at least I would imagine that they have, this feels like it won't affect the majority of regular hardcore zombies players. And I think it's that hardcore audience that really need new main quest rewards. So Treyarch, if you're seeing this, I love the fact that you're trying to really incentivize people to do those Easter eggs and making it more worthwhile to do so, but please consider finding a way to make it more worthwhile for those hardcore players who do the eggs over and over again to keep doing them. If I've maxed out my crystals, I have no reason to still want to do an Easter egg at that point. And granted, they are fun, and that is a reason in itself to do those Easter eggs, but look at it this way, right? There are blueprints that are challenge specific to the Onslaught mode that basically are exactly what I'm asking for here, except they're just in Onslaught. Why not do that in the main round-based zombies maps? It seems like such a no-brainer, and I don't understand why this change hasn't been made yet. Even just as an experiment, make it so that in the next round-based map or in Firebase Z, you do the Easter egg 5 or 10 times and you get yourself a blueprint. That would be so damn good, and I think the whole zombies community would love it. Like, I don't think anyone would say, oh, I don't like this. Like, please, it would be amazing. Also, this isn't in the patch notes, but Treyarch are working on a feature so that you can track your challenge progress on the pause screen, which is something that I've been shouting about for months now, and I'm really glad that they're working on it. It's not going to be coming in Season 3 Reloaded, but it is in the pipeline at some point, and so if Treyarch are hearing us on that front, I'm sure at some point they'll hear us on the Easter egg rewards thing. Like, surely, because they're doing a lot of stuff here to really try and appease the player base and give us what we want, and so I guess I would just raise my hand again and say, yep, custom blueprints for doing Easter eggs, that's a really big one on the list, guys. Please, please don't sleep on it. With all of that said, blimey, that was a lot of no-nonsense news. I've been MrRoflWaffles. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you have, and I'll see you next time. Wow. Bye for now.